Okay, so now that we've got VirtualBox is up and running and we have a config loaded in it, this one was from 94, the next step we're going to do is to change the server that it's pointed in here to our VirtualBox cluster server. And the reason for this is then we can do uploads and the system will act more like a normal system. So to do that, we go over here to System and to Servers. That's the page I'm on right now. And these are the two servers that were on there. And so we need to get rid of those because they don't exist in our VirtualBox. So we just select them, we delete them. Now we're going to add a new server. And the new server, I'm just going to call it Stunt Double. And the IP address we give it is not the same as this one. It's going to be slightly different because we want to put in the cluster IP so it acts as a more stable system. And that IP is 192.168.56.110. Now when I add this server, and the 110 signifies that it's the cluster IP. Now it comes in and it says license valid. Go over here and now I can actually do an upload just like a real system. Now if you have an issue with a server on a truck, you would have to delete that server before you could do uploads. It would give you an error and say you couldn't do it. So whichever one was bad, you would have to delete. And then you could add it back later after the problem was corrected. And in this case also, because we're working offline, if we were to save this config and we wanted to put it back into 94, we would have to put those IP addresses back in here. We'd have to delete the Stunt Double one, and then it would be the IP of the truck, and it would be a 5.3 and a 5.4 as the last digits on there. So now it says license valid, it's good, it's on its feet. And this, again, this is the IP of the cluster of the VirtualBox. So we can do uploads to make it seem like a real system. So now we're going to go over some of the menus in Magnum. And we're going to skip over devices, timelines, source availability as a topic for a future video. Let's go to port labels. So port labels is a way of describing or labeling a source or destination globally. So in this case, let's say I want to go to subscriptions and say I wanted to do a different color for the cameras. So I would just go up here, I clicked in the box, let's say cam, I can do a couple of them. And I go over here to manage labels on the right, I double click in my color box and a single click in there, then I can move this around to change the color. So say I want it to be blue, I can change the shade of blue, I'm happy with that. Back to manage labels. So now if I type cam again, it's automatically going to make that blue. I can do that as many times as I want. If I wanted another source, then it would be a different color, like RF, for example. We're going to call that RF. Go over to Manage Labels, click in the color box, and say I want to make that maybe a purple color. Manage Labels. So I can do that for sources or destinations, and I can have as many different colors, and that will override anything that's on the panel or anything else. And it gives you the option of having different colors for the same group of sources. So for example, if you wanted to have your audio ISOs be a different color from everything else on the page, you could do that. If you wanted to have your EVS, it's named red, colored red, you could do that with here. And you could select either virtual ports, subscriptions, or whatever you need to do. So now we did that. We're going to skip over port attributes and playlists and go to virtual ports. And a virtual ports is a way of creating a source or destination that spans levels and frames. So it combines the video, which is on the EQX frame, and the audio, which is on the EMR frame. And it puts the two together to create a single source. So this is CC1, this is its video level, this is its audio levels. If we want to add a new one, it's very simple. You just click on Add, and call it Test, and it'll add it down at the bottom. Now if I wanted to grab another source that I knew where it was, so I could click on this and say Control C for copy, and you see how it highlights around it. I go back down here and I do Control V for paste. And in this case, I made a video only ISO. So this one is only going to route video to that source and keep the audio unless I put audio levels in there. But I can add audio the same way. Control C, go down here, Control V. And if I want to do an audio only source virtual port, I'll do the same thing. I'll just populate the audio levels that I wanted, and that would work. And I can also export this if I want to go to Excel and do a lot of editing in there. I can do that, and I have to import it back in. But you do have to be careful with that, because obviously in Excel it's not going to correct you if you do something wrong, and you could do a lot of work and have something that doesn't line up correctly. So now we're going to talk about subscriptions. And a subscription is a virtual router output to a virtual router input. It does not tie up physical router sources and destinations. It's virtual, but it allows you to route something into something else. So this brings up one of the ways that I like to work is have a couple of tabs open at the top. So let's open up a couple of tabs up here. Log into that. Okay. So there is a little bit of a risk when you're editing in multiple tabs, but it is so much faster. And the reason it's faster is you can cut between tabs really quick on the top. So I usually only do it when I'm first editing a show from scratch. And then before the show, I will close these out. But you do have to be careful you don't have too many tabs open, because it can actually cause issues with the servers, especially if you have multiple people working on the server at the same time. You have a whole lot of windows, you can cause problems. But in your initial editing, it is so much faster to have at least a couple of tabs open. And I typically will have the advanced routes, I'll have the names open, and maybe the interfaces or something like that. So going back to our example, so we have a subscription called Camera 1, and this shows up in advanced routes, so I can route into it. Now normally this would be CCU1 would be my video source, and maybe my under cams would be my audio source that goes with that source. But this is a destination, so this is what's created. So we have our Camera 1 subscription, and the Camera 1 subscription will be in the EVS or the tape machine router heads. It will be in the switcher input. It will be in the monitor wall. It'll be everywhere in the truck. Will be this Camera 1, but it's actually these set of virtual router cross points right here. So say I want to change this. So say I'm taking a feed from another truck, and this is actually FrameSync 3 is the video. So now I've just made that route, and I can do that change, and without doing an upload, I can actually just take that route, and now this everywhere in the truck system, FrameSync 3 is Camera 1. But you do have to be careful with subscriptions. In most versions of Magnum, you can't route a subscription to a subscription. It won't allow you to do that. And in some versions of Magnum, you have an issue with breakaways, so you have to be careful with that as well. So if you want to do only audio or something else, you just have to be careful. And for me personally, when I'm building a camera subscription or anything else, if it doesn't have to have all 16 channels of audio, I only build it with 4. Because if you're switching something in the router head, it can take longer for it to load up, and it can cause other issues. So if you don't need all 16 channels of audio, don't put all 16 channels of audio. Just do 4. That makes it a little bit easier and a little bit faster to load. Some sources like TX will need all 16 channels. The EVSs and the virtual ports need all 16 channels. But in the subscription world, if it doesn't need 16 channels, you don't have to put 16 channels there. So now we'll go over mirrored destinations. And again, that's in the System tab, mirrored destinations, and that brings up this page. Now right here, there's none configured, so we're going to add a mirror group. And a mirror group is, or destination is just what it sounds like. It's a mirror. So the two destinations route together. So whatever you route to one goes to the other one. They act identically. So here we're going to add one. I'm going to call it test. Now it comes up here and it says the number of destinations associated with it are 0 because there's none created. So let's go in here and let's look at a video destination. And let's say that router output 300 goes to the IO. Now these are only going to be your EQX numbers, so you have to know the number of the destination is that you want to tie together. So in this case, let's say I want to do 300, 301, and 302. And I'm going to assign them to a mirror group. In this case, I only have the one. I have test. So what I'm going to have to do here is click on add to group, and the group that I have there is test, and those will appear, and over here it shows me that it's 3. Now if you had other things assigned to test over here, you could select it and it would show you what is in that group, but because nothing was assigned before, nothing showed up. So I have those destinations assigned to my group test, and this, you can't span levels when you do a destination like this, a mirrored destination. So you can have the video outputs you want to go together. If you want to have audio levels go together, you have to create separate groups for each channel of audio that you want to do. So it can be time consuming if you want to do several channels of an EVS, for example. Now if you want to remove these, I just click the one that I want to stay in the group, check the one I want to leave, and hit remove from group, and now it's gone and this number went down to 2. And I can also delete the group here, or I can have as many groups as I need to have right here. And that's about all we're going to cover in this tab. So the next thing we're going to go over is naming. And when you do names, a lot of people in the past, they've gone to the virtual port tab and you click on whichever one you want to change the name, and it goes. And then you have to go back. If you want to do a subscription, then you have to change it. You go to system and go to subscription. You have the page load up and off you go. But in names, everything exists here. So when you're in virtual right now and I want to go up to subscriptions, I just click it and it pops up, and it's much faster than loading the entire page. And it's still, you're still naming the same thing, but it just doesn't bring up all the other information that's associated with it. Like for the virtual ports, we have all those other audio channels. So it only brings up the naming, so it scrolls quicker and it loads quicker. But you're naming in the same place. It's just another place to name it. So now what we're going to do is do a name set. And this global name set is what everything in the truck is looking at currently, is this global name set. So you have different show names in here for different things. But what you could do is leave those alone and create another name set. Let's say we call it show. This is really going to be used for is naming in the panels. So an example of that is like right here, you see this EVS is called AAAA. And the reason we do multiple letters is so that it differentiates itself when you're doing searching for different sources that otherwise doesn't pop up everything with an A. But what you could do, if you do a name set in the panel, is keep this as EVS 11, and instead we create a show name set that goes to the panel, and we can just call that a single A, for example, and call this one a single B. Move this back to EVS 12. So now this is not what shows up. The show name set does not show up in the advanced routes. The main use for it is going to be in the panels. So now if we go to interfaces, I need to refresh this because this was open before. So I'm going to go back to interfaces. And now over here we have this default name set, and we can change that to be show. So when the panel reboots, it comes up as show. But if we click on the panel, and you'll notice here it has that name set in there, the show name set that we created. But if we want to go back, it's literally that quick to just load it up. So we could build our panel this way with EVS 11, 12, whatever, all the normal names, and then name it the way we want it to be displayed in the panel in the show name set. And then once we have everything positioned here where we want it, then we just do show. And now our names will appear that way, and it only appears to that panel to whoever has the show name set selected. And we can just send that, and that's what people who are looking at this panel will see. So going back to names, the other thing we can do in here that's kind of fun is the auto generate. So we're going to have to select something here. It's handy that it shows you in the window if you do something that it doesn't like. I'm going to click on the first one, and I'm going to go down to that one, and I held the shift button down, and then I clicked on the bottom, so it selected all the group that I wanted to name. And I go to auto generate, and I'm going to do this in the show name set only, and I'm going to create a new camera, a new category, and call it camera. And then my separator, I'm going to do an underscore, and then the suffix begins at 1. And you have to preview it, it won't let you just apply it. So I previewed it, and now I've created names for all those cameras. And I can do this for any groups of things, for frame syncs, for MADI inputs and outputs. This can be for source or destination, TDM, anything else that I want to name, and it'll auto name them, and it does it very quickly. And that's going to show up in that show name set. So if I want to change the name of it, I decide I don't like the name show, I want to call it something else, I can just click on the pencil, call it test, and there it is. If I want to delete it, trash can, off it goes. Categories, that's what I just created there, and you can use the categories to search by or to create the different names inside the name sets. And again, you just add it, and I can call it a frame sync, whatever I want to do for my groups of my categories. And again, with multiple tabs, like you see here, so I just wanted to open advanced routes, so it takes a while to load. So if I keep that loaded all the time, I keep that tab open, it won't necessarily see my name changes or things like that, but I can do a quick route. If somebody says, oh, can you route this to this wooler, you can still do that. You can still do that in here. Now the other thing that's fun here, if you want to know what this really is, what its true source is, I'm holding down the shift button on my keyboard. I just bring this arrow over, and that tells me what that physical source actually is when I hold down the shift button. And that's in advanced routes. So again, multiple tabs is a quick way to get between them, so you're not constantly loading things up, but you just have to be careful. You don't have too many tabs open, and that you remember to refresh them.